Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to show how to solder. This is going to be a soldering video, and we got a board here. I wanted to unsolder this. I wanted to figure out exactly how many capacitors we have here. I wanted to take out this big boy capacitor right here, this one big, and I also wanted to take out these switches used for further projects. We got some dials here, and other than that, yeah, we're just gonna take out some of these switches right here. They're small. Here, let's see if I can. Yeah, those. That's the ones we want to take out because we can turn it, and it's gonna like change the voltage or something. And I'm going to use this board as an example on how to solder. And first we're going to take some things out, then we're going to put some things back in to show exactly how to put things back in on a copper board. Now, when it comes to solder, there's a couple different types of solder. There's lead, there's aluminum, there's a couple different soft solders, and they come in different sizes and shapes. Now, I mean, the sizes and shapes don't matter much unless you're getting to this fine detail. Like I'm going to say, like, here. This, here, let me see if I can grab something to really show you how fine it can get. Okay, so, see these right here? These are computer parts for a board. Each one of these little bubbles is a capacitor. And you're gonna, if you want to not flood the whole thing, have a very small amount. So that's the reason you would need smaller solder. Okay, see this thing right here? This thing has, I'm gonna say, 8 connections. And that's not a lot either. There's a lot of other things that have 20 connections. There's a lot of other things that have way more, especially the smaller chips. And this can get hard because you flip this over and you only got one soldering gun. You try to get a solder a little bit this one, and then it's solder this one. Even if it's a really hot gun, it's gonna basically cool down over here by the time you get over here, and then you still got another side to go. So if you try to force it, you're gonna start ripping the pads, and that's a big problem. So either you have to flood it with solder and heat it all up at the same time, because solder conducts heat. Or you're going to have to maybe use some solder wick. And solder wick is really great for soaking up the solder. What you do is you take some flux type that's for flowing the solder. Now there are different types of fluxes. Some is for sticking and some is for flowing. So what you do is you take some flowing solder, you stick it on there, and then you put the soldering wick. And I'm going to put the soldering wick and the flowing solder in the link in the description. And what you do is you put it down, you just like flow it down over here and suck it up. And I'm going to suck up some solder for you, just a second. There we are. Okay. I'll flip it up. What we're going to try to do is we're going to just suck up any solder that we can. And the reason why is because we don't exactly need to find the part that we need to suck up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some soldering flux, flowing flux, all over these places here. And I'm going to get my soldering wick. Clean off my gun. You just push it on there. Push it on there, and it should soak it up. And so what it is soldering wick is copper woven together, and when it's combined with the flux wants to ball up, and it'll soak up that solder because of the flux. And it's very effective. So a lot of the times, if you need to take off more than one point at the same time, you just suck the solder off. And the reason why I'm talking about taking parts off a board a lot more than putting it back on is because if you understand how that works, it gets a lot easier. And I'm gonna suck off one extra part over here. Gotta hit on myself here. Yeah, there we go. Here. I'm gonna try to give you a better view of this. I'm gonna put a little bit more flux on that. I kind of like got my view there, kind of rubbed away. Okay, just put it on there. And you just kind of soak up the solder, just like that. And as you can see, the points are a lot more unsoaked. And let's look at this part here that we were taking off. It is very hot, by the way, so I'm going to use pliers. And I'm not, like, here, let me show you from the top. This is the part that we're trying to take off. And it comes right off. And we got a little piece that I missed. But anyways, normally if you just are a little bit more patient, then it shouldn't be that big of a problem. So that's normally what you would do for a lot more points of solder. You just suck it off. And then you'd resolder it once you're done. Now, if you want, you could take all that solder off or heat it all up at once with a soldering gun. And that's basically like a big hot air gun that blows it and heats it all up. And then you could just lift it up and put it back down. And I have one of those, but I'm not going to do it because it takes a second for it to work. So now I'm going to show you how to solder things on a board. I'm going to show you how to solder this motor on here. I'm going to show you how to solder this motor on here a little easier. Maybe set some of this out of the way. A little easier. It's bigger, but it'll get the job done. So what we got here is here, and we got here. So, first of all, I gotta suck all this off. And it's not that hard, you just need to get some good flux, and a lot will be taken care of. Good flux goes a long way. Just need to suck these sockets dry. And don't be afraid to use the iron to kind of scrape it. Not scrape it, but like rub the flux in there. Okay, now we're going to the other joint. Right here. Okay. And it just comes right off. I didn't touch it at all, it just fell off. So what we got here is we've got a motor, we've got joints. Look at that, there's no solder on there. There's nothing on there. On either of the joints. See if I could get this to focus a little easier. Sorry about the quality, I'm just trying to get you a better close-up look on some of these PCB parts. So there's nothing on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back in. So first things first, you just stick it through the hole. Stick it down. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the solder. And we're going to put some more soldering flux on there. Now, flowing solder flux is not that bad for a lot of different reasons. But in reality, you don't need it just to take it off. You can just use it there to ball it. So I'm going to heat it up. Heating up the location. I could just use the solder to just place it down there. See how that is? Just place some solder in there, and then it just heats up and it cools down, just like that. And once you get one of the joints, the other one is basically already in there. So I'm going to put the soldering iron in there, hold it down, heat it up, just touch it with the soldering wire. Here we are. Then it just cools down. And we got this. Hard as a rock. Will come out. And we can do that for all the smaller scale, small scale, everything else. This, that, the little switchy thing. All kinds of LEDs. I don't know, but let's say one thing that I think you should never solder to is copper wire. Now, if it's woven together like this flux right here, I mean this wick, the solder wick, then it's all good. And if it's like wire, like strands, then you can use a different technique for doing that, like the one I showed you. But if it's just a straight bar like this, it's really hard because it's so smooth. You might get something to stick on there for a second, but it'll fall right off after it gets any strength at all. So right now I have like this one's laminated, but I unlaminated it on the end here. I'm going to show you how annoying it is to solder onto one of these copper wires. So the reason why is because it's got no. I'm trying to stick something on there, but it's just here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say that that's soldered on. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to try to move the solder a little bit. Okay, it just broke right off. I barely even touched it, and it's just not. It doesn't have anywhere to stick. This solder does not have anywhere to go. So what you want to do is you want to scratch it up. I'm going to show this with pliers. That's a lot more scratched up, but it's not as much as we could go. Here, let me get a knife. get the same solder, stick it on here. Okay, so stick some solder on here, and it fell right off. And that's the problem. Like, even if you scratch up this wire, it's just so hard to make it stick. You just really have to make it work. But at the same time, even if you can't get this to stick, you don't have to try to force that door open. Just clamp it. Get some other thing and crimp it down, and you're good. So when you're dealing with this wire, just crimp it, please, and connect it from the crimped with the wire. And it's cool if it's copper braided, but if it's like this, it's going to be so hard to deal with or solder onto. And sometimes you just have to do that. But if you absolutely have to do this, I'm going to show you how to solder onto some surface that's not going to want to take. So I'm going to use, for example, a battery. Okay, I sanded it. Let's look at it again. We got it's a lot more smooth, a lot more clear. I'm going to use our soldering gun and some of the flow. Soldering wire, ball. The thing you do is you need a ball of this. Now it makes a little ball, it's like almost about to drip. And you just put it on the spot. Now, the problem is, if you put any pressure on some of these, it's just going to come off. And that's not what you want. See, I'm like trying to pat it on there, it's like coming off different locations. So let's say that we have something like this. This would classically be called a messy weld. Now, the thinner you can get it, the better. Now, I already scratched this up pretty good by the sandpaper, but ideally you would want to, okay, it just came right off, use a knife. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Get like the tip. Generally something like that, something just to get it to stick. The deeper the grooves, the better. The problem is you're trying to work with that kind of surface. Now we're going to try again. I'm going to take the solder ball, stash. Just solder this. We don't want a big ball. We want it flat. Okay. See how we have this? It's sticking on. And that's the reason you want to scratch it from both directions. But okay, let's assume that you have something that you're trying to stick to something else and it's not sticking. So let's take this by process of elimination. I've had things that do that. What you need to sometimes do is stick it to something else that is sticking. So even though it's maybe not touching it completely, you can touch it with something else and maybe bridge that gap with the solder and create your own links, you know? And sometimes you could scratch underneath, scratch on top, put some solder in the middle, and just kind of smush that in with the heat by heating it on the top. And that will work. if you do it right. But if you are trying to solder something in there and it still isn't sticking, you can't figure out why, you probably just need some sticking soldering flux, and that's what this is right here. I got some at, I think, what was it? Lowe's or Schnucks or something? Here, let's see. Lead-free, tinning flux, something. So, I think it has something to do with the lead-free, but it's basically going to look something like this. You just goop it on there, and it kind of helps, and you just kind of stick it on there. If it doesn't stick immediately, it probably is going to start balling up because you used it up. So you kind of just have to use it quickly. Yeah, but that's about all I have for the guide on soldering. And just stick to wires, and if you need to, solder another wire to a location that you need it, and use that wire to solder to the other wire. Create your own leads. You don't need to follow the board. But on other thoughts, be careful when you're soldering boards, because I say this so that you don't tear the board, because if you tear the copper plate, it's going to be really annoying and you're not going to get any connection. You're going to be like, why is this not working? Why is there no connection? You probably tore the connector. If this happens, you're going to have to solder new leads by scraping up the existing leads and soldering that all together. So you're going to have to know what you're doing, and you're going to have to get good at it, because that's difficult. Other than that, I think that's all I have right now for soldering, and I will learn more, but yeah, that's all I have right now. So bye.